Hey Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Look, I have a hot take about this particular aspect of clinical research. I think somebody at the site level, in addition to the PI, it's probably going to be the study coordinator, but if it's the site director, it's fine. As long as this person has patient interaction, or this person is able to train their staff on what's important about telling the staff how to talk to patients about certain things. So from a pre-screening perspective, from a study going on perspective, when it comes to patient safety, somebody at the site really needs to be like a mini expert on the investigational product. And I'm guilty of this, guys. I've been doing this clinical research for 18 years now. I've never really gone in depth, like exploring the investigational products like I should have. We all have that investigator brochure. We all ignore it. I mean, let's face it, like very few people read the investigator brochure. But I think it's important from a research perspective. I think it's site's job that somebody, and this is where if you're a study coordinator, you have such a massive opportunity to stand out and to level up your career and just level up your knowledge for the sake of science. I mean, if you don't have an expertise in medicine, that's fine. No one's expecting you to be a doctor or a PhD. No one's saying you can't learn this stuff on your own, especially when you go in depth on just one investigational product. So take any study you're working on that may be interesting to you, or let's say you're a coordinator and you have like 10 studies. Well, maybe it's unrealistic to go in depth on all 10, although I think somebody at the site needs to have a solid understanding of the investigational product of all of these studies, and it usually falls on the PI or the sub-I. But let's just start with one, okay? Take the one you find most interesting that you're a coordinator on, or if you're a site director, pick one that you're most interested in and go in depth. So understand the investigator brochure, scour the internet for the drug. Lately, I've been using ChatGPT, and I know it's not always accurate, but ChatGPT at least shows me where I can look further. So one of the things from a patient safety perspective is understanding the mechanism of action of these investigational products. And what I found was that understanding this, even like having like a small understanding of the investigational product and how it works, will help you on those elevator pitches to study participants, potential study participants. So usually when a study participant comes in to do a screening visit, somebody's already talked to them on the phone or over text or over email. Maybe the doctor or the clinician has talked to them about what the study is for. They at least tell them, hey, we have a new study for this indication. We think you might be a good fit. During the informed consent process, which I'm going to do a video and just go in depth on how to do an ICF properly. This is not that video. But during the informed consent process, actually right before the informed consent process, it helps to have an elevator pitch for the study. Like, this is the drug, this is why they're studying it, this is how they came to this understanding, this is the mechanism of action, this is the half-life, these are the medications that it likely interacts with, these are the medications that are not allowed in the study. Why are they not allowed in the study? This is the possible side effects. These are the most common side effects. There are side effects that are unknown, but based on its mechanism of action. We're looking at contraindications. This is why excluded medications exist in the study. This is why we're doing these procedures. This is why we have all these blood draws. Like, somebody needs to go in depth on this stuff, okay? And I've noticed at the majority of sites, my own included, that this is lacking. And it's lacking because of time. And because time is money. And because at sites we expect that the sponsor is going to take care of this stuff. And the sponsor does, but the sponsor doesn't know how to communicate it effectively. I've gone to investigator meetings. I've sat through SIVs. The mechanism of action comes up maybe 4 or 5 slides out of 120 slides. Those 4 or 5 slides are probably the most important when it comes to patient safety and patient communication. And the sponsor can't communicate with the patient. So they pass this off to the PI, and as we all know, the PIs get into it because they like the science, but they don't have time to sit and explain this stuff to the patient. So the coordinator, really, or the site director, or somebody at the site level, needs to become an expert, almost have a mini PhD in understanding of the investigational product. And you might be thinking, if you're a coordinator, hey, they don't pay me enough to do this. Well, think of how much more effective you're going to be at pre-screening candidates. Think of how much more effective you're going to be at looking at adverse events. And when a patient tells you something, and understanding what an adverse event of special interest is for that study. And not only what, because you should know that, but why. Why is it an adverse event of special interest that the sponsor is looking out for? If you take a more holistic approach, and this is really like a scientific approach to the study drug, you're going to actually get more fulfillment in your job. And yeah, not all study drugs, not all investigational products are interesting. Some are Me Too drugs, some are extended release, but you know what? Those are easier to learn. Those are easier to learn and to explain, and those are easier to do like a little sales pitch to the patient. The harder ones are the newer ones, and those are actually the ones that are more interesting because those are generally new mechanism of actions. And sometimes patients, they like to hear that because you got patients in these studies, they've tried everything. Nothing works. Well, here's something with a new mechanism of action, and here's the pathway that it works, and you can get into the deep into the weeds of the different enzymes and proteins that it inhibits and it turns off and on and all that stuff. Start learning this stuff, guys. Get more fulfillment for yourself personally out of your career. You're gonna learn more about science. This is how you level up your expertise in the therapeutic areas. You're gonna become a better communicator when it comes to patients. You're gonna do better. Patients are gonna feel more comfortable knowing that the coordinator or the person doing the majority of their interactions with them understands the study drug. And sometimes these patients are going to become experts as well. So you can tell them, hey, this is the drug, like, go study this stuff yourself. One of the things one of my sponsors has done, it's a small biotech, they provided like this 5-minute short video, and it's right on their website for everyone to see, mechanism of action for their new investigational product. I actually show this to all the patients so that they have an appreciation of the science that goes into this stuff. Like, this is not something some scientist just came up with and said, hey, let's try this out. The video actually shows a detailed breakdown of that enzyme cascade that occurs and the hypothesis and the rationale. And then you can show them that video. It's 4 or 5 minutes. And then you can explain to them, look, this is why we're doing the study. This is why we have all these blood draws. This is why we have all these exploratory endpoints. It's also going to help with patient retention because now the patient understands why their visits might be 4 hours, or why they need 10 tubes of blood in one visit, or why they need an MRI and then another procedure. And they understand. And once you have them invested in their own clinical research study, they have more incentive to continue. And this also is going to work wonders for your career opportunities. And the site, whoever's in charge, whoever's your direct manager, they're going to appreciate you more. Like, it may not be right away, but they'll appreciate you more. And now we have the tools, right? We used to have to do Google and go through peer-reviewed journals, and when you start reading all these things, you're not going to understand half of it if you're like me. So then you have to stop and go Google what those things are that you don't understand. But now something like ChatGPT always tests for accuracy, but they're getting more accurate, and you can run these things by your PI and your sub-I. And if your PI or your sub-I are like your managers in a way, they're going to think to themselves, wow, this person's really interested in this stuff. I'm glad I have this person. I can't lose this person. This person's interested in their work. And it's going to force them, maybe they don't know this stuff. And they're going to be impressed with you. Wow, this person knows this. Even I didn't know that. Let me look it up. And you can run the Chat GPT. I've done this with my PI. You can run the Chat GPT response. I usually ask it, what's the rationale for a mechanism of action for this investigational product, for the contraindications with this medication? And it will tell you. And if it doesn't know, we'll say, well, there are no known interactions. But then you have to prompt it with, well, what are some hypothetical ones? And then it will give them to you, and then you can run it through your PI or your sub-Is or your clinicians, maybe even the medical monitor. Medical monitors are going to be amazed that you're going through all this. And you can ask them, hey, is this accurate? And you're going to get responses from them, and you're going to impress a lot of people. You're going to get more fulfillment from yourself. The patients are going to like you a lot better. They'll be more confident with you. Not to mention what this is going to do for your career. Not to mention if you start putting this stuff on your CV, hey, I have a deep understanding of mechanism of action of, I mean, you can make your CV stand out. And then in the interviews, they're going to ask you about that. Hey, I noticed you have an interest in this. Well, what did you learn about that? And then you can go through on a long tail conversation about that. And it's just things that other people don't do. My buddy Brad at Notifile, Hightower Clinical, Notifile podcast, everybody go subscribe and follow him. He says, he calls it scaling the unscalable. And we have maybe at Yuma Clinical Trials at the time of this video, 7 active studies. I've probably only gone on a deep dive on 2 or 3 of these investigational products. So there's work to do, guys. I'm trying to get my coordinators to do this, but I'm also realistic, like, hey, they're busy. They don't have time, but let's use some of these tools. Let's use some of this tech. Let's use AI. Here's a perfect example of how you can use AI. Again, check for accuracy. Double check with your medical monitor and your PI and your sub-Is. But check for accuracy. Use these tools to improve your understanding. This is the world we live in now, Guru Nation. It's actually exciting if you think about it. Get a mini PhD in whatever study you're doing, especially the science behind it. Even if you have no science background, nobody cares. You can still learn. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye-bye.